Okay, we're ready.
You think so? Okay.
Yeah.
So I'll start with the day and the time that we are here for the records, okay?
Sure.
So today is September 20th, 2013. It's, what is it, 12:30 on Friday afternoon, and we are at Lou Fasulo's house in Golden. We're interviewing Lou Fasulo about his long working history with Rocky Flats and about his experiences with Rocky Flats during this time that he worked there. So thank you, Lou, for having us. I would like to ask you first of all if you would like to introduce yourself, where you were born, when you were born, where you were raised. Tell us a little bit about your family and give us a little bit more about your personal background, please.
Okay. My mother and dad came from Sicily, Italy, and I was the firstborn in Detroit, Michigan. I was born in June 16, 1921. And then my mother and dad had two more boys and one girl. Well, they really had another girl, but she died about a year after she was born. So since I was born, my folks have died. And I lived in Detroit and Detroit area until 1943, when my wife and I, with another couple, Les and Helen Nemeth, moved to Los Alamos. And when I graduated from high school, Fortson High School, I got a job at I got a job at the Ford Motor Company, taking an apprenticeship in tool and die making. And it was a 3-year course. And I graduated after 3 years, and then I took their engineering course. And I took it for 1 year, and then I moved to Los Alamos. And how that happened is there was this couple, Les and Helen. Well, Les worked with me in the tool and die shop. And this one summer, he and his wife kept after us because we'd go out to the beach, to the lake. It seems like every other week. And he'd keep after me and saying, Lou, we are signed up for something that sounds exciting. Well, how about you and Daisy going? And we both said, no, we don't want to go, because it was out of state. Well, after a while, I said, okay. So they contacted the handyman. I don't know if you call him the handyman, a contact man, and told him that I was interested in going to this secret project in New Mexico. So it took about 2 weeks to 3 weeks that I had to get a clearance, Q clearance. And they got their clearance about 2 weeks before we did, because they had put in earlier than us. And so we met the contact man and filled out the paperwork. And 3 weeks later or a month later, This was October. We got a word that we were accepted and we could go anytime to this secret project. They'd give us information how to get there. So we said, okay. And they said, and this couple that we chummed with had already been accepted, and they were just waiting for us. And then we'd go out together, separate cars, but drive out together too. And we found out that we would be going to New Mexico. And they wouldn't tell us where, they just said that you will be going to New Mexico, you will drive to Santa Fe and go to East Palace 109, and you'll meet a lady there, her name is Dorothy Gibbons. And she will give you all the information you need to know to get to the project. So we said, okay. So we had to leave. We left about 3 or 4 days later because we had to get our furniture lined up to be taken away. Excuse me. And the furniture people were done, and we left. And Les and Helen left, and we let them lead the way to New Mexico. And then we got to Santa Fe, and Dorothy McGibbon's office, where she worked in East 109 Palace Avenue. And she gave us information, where we were going, and where we would stay. So we got it, and then we left we got there late morning and left in early afternoon. And we went through 2 Indian pueblos, Milwaukee and boy, I can't remember the other one. Anyway, it was another Indian pueblo, and the road was not very good, and we had to go across a rickety bridge over the Rio Grande River, and then once we passed that, we started to go up. Because we were at about 5,000 feet, we had to go up to about 7,000. We didn't know that at the time. And so we drove up, and about halfway up, they were working, widening the road, you know. They were just working on the road. So we had to stop for the machine to get out of the way. And I couldn't start the car. And we were right near the canyon. There was a canyon down there. The car was right next to it. And we finally got that squared away. And we continued on to they called it the hill. So that's where we went, at the hill. And then there was a fenced area up there and a couple military people, and we had to stop, and we showed them our papers, and they says, okay, just go down Trinity, that's the main street, and you'll have to stop at this office in there and to pick up your key for where you're going to live and the address and all that. So that was fine. So we stayed in an efficiency apartment where they had these apartments that we stayed were for couples without children. Then they had other ones somewhere else. So we were tired and we went to bed. Next morning we got up and there was snow on the ground. And it had been real nice all day. We were really surprised. So that was the start of our day and our activity at Los Alamos. Of course, they didn't call it Los Alamos, they just called it the Hill. But eventually we got the name of it, you know.
Do you remember your address?
No, I don't. It was about a half a mile down past the offices on Trinity Drive, because that's where we lived then. And the first efficiency apartment was the one where we moved into. No, I don't remember the address, to be honest with you. So then the next day I walked up and left, because we lived on the corner of the apartment and they lived right across from us. We were on the porch, and we just walked across to their apartment. That was nice. So we went to work and just walked up there, and the building we worked in was a shop, and it was called C Shop. And so we met the supervision in C Shop, and they told Les and I where we were going to work and all that. So that was the start.
What did you know about the secret project before you came? What kind of idea did you have before you left?
Well, they told us that we were going to New Mexico and go and meet this lady in Santa Fe at 109 East Palace, Santa Fe. And they said it was a secret project. And at this project, everyone had the same post office, 16. I'll have to get my book. I bought the book a long time ago. But anyway, they had one post office number for everybody, and they would review them before mail went out and review them when mail came in. That's how tight the security was. But we could get out, we could leave the project and go down to Santa Fe or Albuquerque and then come back, and that was fine. But we had to keep our mouths closed because, you know, there were a lot of people that were curious. So we lived there almost 9 years, and then about a month before we left, my supervisor in C Shop said, Lou, Dr. Max Roy, the assistant director for production, would like to see you. So I said, okay. So I went up there, and he said, there's a project in Denver area called Rocky Flats. Of course, right now it's called Project Apple. And he told me about it. He says, we'd like to know if you'd like to work at Rocky Flats. Well, I said, I'd never been there. So I said, I'd like to have a week or so to look it over and see how it is. So he says, fine. So when I got home, I told my wife about it, and then I left the next day or the 2 days later, flew down to Denver and no, I didn't, I'm sorry. I drove down. I didn't take an airplane. I drove down and found a hotel or motel to stay, and then the next morning I drove to Rocky Flats. I got information how to get there, and part of it was Highway 72 and the other part was 93, because went into the plant from the west. And I went to this one building called 91 Building. And I met Ed Walko, and he was going to be my boss. And he also was from Rocky Flats, from Los Alamos, sorry. And so I talked to him, and I talked to Bill Cornelison. He was the security manager for the plant. And 91 Building was a nice building to work in. And it had the front section had windows, but the back section was no windows. And you had to go through a guard. There was a guard, so you go from the front section to the back section where all the work went on. So I started out there as a supervisor of final inspection.
And what year are you talking now?
What year I'm talking about is 52.
52.
Because we moved there, well, I skipped a little bit. But what I should have told you is that after I was there a week, I called my wife and I said, I like this place. Would you like to come down and see it? So she flew in Denver, and I picked her up, and we stayed there a few days. And then I called Dr. Max Roy, and I told him I would accept the offer. So we drove back to Los Alamos, my wife and I, and then we gave a notice to Los Alamos that we were leaving. Of course, Max Roy knew about it, Dr. Roy. And then we had to line up a furniture, people that move furniture, you know, have it moved. And
were there more people from Los Alamos leaving for Rocky Flats at
There-
the time?
there were, I would say there were at least 10 people from Los Alamos that went to Rocky Flats. And I can't name them all to you, but I think Fred was one of them. And I don't know if you know them, I've heard of the names of the others or not. Ed Walko, my boss at Rocky Flats, was another one. And
What was their background usually? Those people who came from Los Alamos to Rocky Flats. What did they bring to Rocky Flats?
well, I brought the tool and die making background experience, and then I have to digress a little bit. When at Los Alamos, I worked in the shop for about a year, and then I was moved to inspection because I like inspection better. So I worked in inspection 2, 3, 4 years, and then I was moved to final inspection. And there was another fellow in there, and the two of us worked in inspecting the parts. We didn't know what we were doing. And so that's how Dr. Max Roy contacted me, because I guess they had asked, Jack Bowerbank was the fellow that worked with me, but he refused at the last moment. So then he asked me. So I was second choice for Rocky Flats. And so that was inspection, final inspection. So, and Ed Walko was superintendent of 91 Building, which was the assembly, final inspection and all that, you know. So that's how that developed.
So were they working with plutonium already in 1952? They were.
Yeah, we had a building there. There were a number of buildings. We had 44 which worked on mostly I forget the name. It's part of the everything. I can't think of the name of it right now. And then they had 44, 81, 71, 91. And there was a superintendent for each one of those buildings. And 71 was the building where they did the plutonium. 81 was where they did the uranium. And 44 was I think they worked on beryllium and something else, and I don't remember that something else.
They worked with beryllium in 50.
Pardon?
They worked with beryllium in 52 already.
Yeah.
Already, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll tell you something else. In the inspection at Los Alamos, we inspected some parts. They were made by what's this thing here, Jenny, that is a...
Where?
Right here, Coors.
Oh,
Coors.
Yeah.
Coors made ceramic parts and sent some to us for inspection and use. And so, and they were beautiful, beautiful work. So we would get, 91 would get parts from, start out with, several projects for their material for a while until they were set up. And Bendix was in it. Ohio. What was in Ohio? There was something in Ohio, a small factory that did something.
In Mount Ohio.
Pardon?
In Mount Ohio.
I don't remember the name. And then we had Oak Ridge, which was the big one. And then the assembly plant was in Pantex. So anyway, like Ed Walco, he was my boss, as I told you. He worked at Los Alamos in W Division, and he was a group leader.
What kind of division is that? Could you expand a little bit on that?
I don't know. They had group leaders at various places at Los Alamos, and I guess, if I remember right, the group leaders answered to the directors. They had directors and then group leaders. They had a director for each type of work that they were responsible for. So that's what Ed Walker was. He must have been a group leader or an assistant group leader. But I think he was the group leader. So as I say, I think we had about 10 people that came from Los Alamos. They worked in different areas at Los Alamos and came to help at Rocky Flats get it set up.
What appealed to you with Rocky Flats when you first came there? What made it different compared to Los Alamos?
Well, the fact that I was a supervisor there, had 4 or 5 inspectors, and we worked in the back where you didn't have any windows, but it didn't make any difference. You had work to do, you know. We had a lot of inspection of parts, you know. We were the final inspection, where everything that came in had to go through us before they assembled it. And then they assembled it in our building, and then they'd package it and ship it out of our building. We had a train that would carry it to here in Denver. And that's it there.
So it was clearly a promotion for you, coming from Los Alamos?
Oh yeah, yeah. I was a supervisor of the final inspection. And I don't remember all the positions I had, but a year or two later, I was promoted to I was manager of inspection, assembly, and shipping in 91 building. And then I was made building superintendent of a new building they were building called 77. And it wasn't too far from where we lived, or worked, I should say. And then I worked at different places. In fact, the job I had, I went to all the buildings because I was responsible for the inspection. So I wanted to see the inspection going on in each building.
And how would you report on it? Because it sounds like it was a very clear organizational structure.
Yes.
How would you report to your supervisors?
How would I report? Well, Ed Walker was my boss all the time. So I'd sit in on the meetings and we'd talk what we are doing and this and that.
Did you also have to write reports? Or?
Not too many. I'm not too crazy about that. Deleted. So.
And how was that relationship with your supervisors? Did you feel like you were able to talk openly about everything, or was it a very
No, you had to be careful.
Yeah.
You had to be careful, very careful. And in fact, as you know, at Rocky Flats, when they had that fire in '69, I think it was, that's when the people that lived there around here finally knew what they were doing there. They were doing something secret, and they knew that it was something to do with special type of material.
Now, could you talk about it at home with your wife?
No. And I'd tell my daughter, she'd ask me, Dad, what are you doing at work? I said, we're making, what did I say? Do you remember, Jenny? Because I tell...
some crazy thing about medication with medicine or something?
Yeah, I said we were manufacturing something, and I don't remember now, cigarettes or something. She believed me, of course. What else could she do? And that's all, and I couldn't say anything else.
But what was your understanding of what was going on at Rocky Flats? When you came there your first year, did you have a clear picture of what they were doing, what they were making?
Pretty clear. Yeah.
They told you when you were interviewed, or how did that go? Can you remember a little bit?
The interview?
Yeah. What did they tell you about Rocky Flats?
Well, first place, it was a secret place too, and it was called Project Apple. And they had every facility that was under this Manhattan Project had a name, and then that's how you would know them. They didn't say, well, this plant is the assembly plant, and this plant does plutonium, and this one does uranium, and so on, you know. Boy, I'll tell you, they were pretty secret. And it's just like when I was promoted to manager of the 91 assembly area and everything enclosed, they had shipping under it too, responsibility that I had to be responsible for. And they had to get a Q clearance? No, I had the Q clearance. Top secret clearance. Because everything I would know, everything that was going in those things and where this was going.
What would be the consequences if you had talked about it?
Boy, I don't know. Probably cut.
I will wonder always what would have happened.
They'd probably cut your head off.
Because there was a lot of security already. In
Yeah,
that area.
there really was. Yeah, Bill Corneliuson was the director of security for Rocky Flats, and then he had guards all over the place. Very nice fellow. And
So these guards were watching you all the time while you were.
they were watching the whole area. Yeah, they were responsible for a certain area, you know, not the whole thing. And but that was quite a responsibility. So, well, that's about it for me. I think I've told you all. I've had several responsible jobs as I worked there, because I was there 31 years at Rocky Flats. And I was not in the same building all the time. I worked in different buildings. I went around to different buildings for part of my job.
How did you feel about the safety at the plant site? Did you feel safe as a worker?
Yes, yes, I did. I did.
How were you protected, or how were you trained to
Well,
keep it safe?
I did not have to handle the parts. You know, we had, they call these glass enclosures where the material, hot material would go through, and you'd put your hands in and work with gloves all the time. I didn't do that. I just saw what was going on and then went to a different place and saw that, so on. But
You worked there for a long time, if I understand it correctly.
31 years.
31 years. So you also saw the outside world changing a lot. And the people outside the fence of Rocky Flats who also had clear opinions about the Cold War, the Cuban Missile Crisis, of course, was a big conflict during that Cold War period. How did you feel? Do you also feel that your attitude towards Rocky Flats perhaps was impacted by all the things that happened outside Rocky Flats?
No, I just, when I came, I learned all this at Los Alamos, and when I came to Rocky Flats, it looked like it was similar, and I was just proud to be part of it, you know. I thought it was I thought it was a very, very important industry. No two ways about it. And so.
Did you tell Mitch you made Band-Aids or something like that?
No, it wasn't that, Jenny. It was something a little
It's real dumb.
simpler. I don't know what I told her, but she bought it for quite a while until she read the news about the fire at Rocky Flats. And that's when it got out what Rocky Flats was about.
How did she react finding out that you'd been lying to her?
Pardon?
How did she react when you found out?
Yeah, she wasn't happy about that, but I told her I had to do it. And I still can't tell you very much. You know, I can tell you it's a nuclear plant, and that's it.
What exactly can you not talk about?
That's a good question. That's a good question. What can you talk about? I'll tell you, I got a kick out of this. When we first came here, we bought a house in Arvada. Lived there 9 months, and my wife wasn't too happy with the house, so we looked around and ended up in Wheat Ridge at a house in Wheat Ridge that looked real nice, so we bought it. Let's see, what was I going to say now?
About the safety and the security?
No, what I wanted to tell you that I thought was cute. Then we got friends with our neighbor on the south, on the left, but it was on the south. And one day when I came home, he came up to me and said, "Lou, I had an FBI man asking about you today, all kinds of questions." I guess every couple of years the FBI have to check these people out, make sure everything's all right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that happened to me about a friend.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was something. So anyway, that's my experiences at Los Alamos and Rocky Flats. I enjoyed both. I
And
enjoyed.
of course, when you think back also for all these 30 years, 31 years, a couple of incidents happened at Rocky Flats. I'm thinking of the 69 fire, of course,
Yeah.
that was the major
Yeah.
accident.
Well, that didn't faze me because I wasn't in that building.
What about the 1957 fire? That was also a big accident. Were you somehow close to that? What did you experience? What did you
57. That was about 5 years after I was there, something like that. No, it didn't bother me.
do you have any recollection of it?
No. The 69, yes, but not the 55.
Are there other incidents that you remember from those early years also? Because
Well,
everything was well documented in those early years because
Yeah.
it was so experimental.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, that's true. Well, now we I was going to say that we at Rocky Flats we started a chapter called management, some kind of management, and we had a lot of the workers were members of the chapter, and I was too, and so I had some experience there. And then the other thing they would do, they had at the beginning. We had a bowling club and we have other things, and I belonged to the bowling club. And one year, our team won. And those are some of the things. And they did like to entertain the people, you know, so they'd be content with what they're doing and everything. And once a year, I think it was, we'd go to, oh boy, my mind is failing. It's where they have those
Oh, like Elitch's or,
e-liches.
oh,
Thank you.
yeah.
And we go there maybe once every year or so, and it'd be open to the people at Rocky Flats to go a particular day to enjoy themselves there.
so was that organized by the contractor, like Dow Chemical? They would
It could be,
organize these events.
yeah. And Dow Chemical was the first contractor. And then the next one I think was Rockwell. And the third one, I wasn't there, I don't think, when they got a third one in.
Did the operations change when there was a new contractor coming in?
Not
Or
just very minimal.
yeah.
Yeah. No, we had good contractors, and the people were getting more and more familiar with their jobs, and there was a lot of harmony there, I think. In my job, I had a different job than other people. You know, you ask someone else, and they may give you a different opinion.
But if I was asking you to describe a normal day on the work floor at Rocky Flats, could you give me, as an outsider, an idea of what your day looked like? What time would you start? How would you
Well,
day develop?
To start out with, I think we used to start at 8 in the morning and worked at 4 in the afternoon, something like that, yeah. And I think it was that way for a few years, and then they changed. It was a different start time. I think it had a lot to do with the daylight saving time or whatever it was. Changing from standard time to daylight saving times. That's all I can say about that.
Would you get breaks once in a while?
Oh yeah, sure. And then they'd have, in the buildings, they'd have cafeterias, so to speak, where you could have your lunch.
And how would that go if you had to move from one building to the next?
How would it go?
Yeah.
Okay. Normally, if you had a job where you had people working in one building, another building, you would generally use your car and drive from one parking area to another one to another one.
And go through security again
Yeah.
when you enter the next building?
Uh-huh.
So were there production areas that were maybe a little bit more hazardous for you?
Well, every building had a production area. 44, 81, 77. I'm sorry, 71 and 91. 91 was the final area where it'd be assembled and shipped. And then in my different jobs, I also traveled to Oak Ridge, Pantex, and Ohio. Ohio. Bendix, and things like that. Got to see a number of the other areas that doing secret work just like we were. But most of them would come to us. Most of the material and everything from Hanford, Oregon, Washington, and they shipped their material into us. And then 81, not 81. There was a small project in Albuquerque that finally closed down, and they moved their people in Rocky Flats. But they were making small parts for this program also.
So what, if you compare Rocky Flats to all these other facilities, what do you think was special about Rocky Flats? What made Rocky Flats unique or made it stand out?
It's a good question. Well, I think the fact that we had a better understanding of what was going on. We were able to go from one building to another if it was necessary. And we had all the buildings represented the projects that were outside. Hanford, Bendix, Oak Ridge, and so on.
Was it safer at Rocky Flats?
Safer?
Yeah.
Rocky Flats, I thought was safe. Have you heard otherwise?
I haven't, no, but I'm just curious about how it compares to these other facilities.
I can't say. I thought the other facilities seemed to be okay too. But I thought Rocky Flats was good. And I spent 31 years there.
Do you feel that safety was a priority
Yes,
at Rocky Flats?
sure.
Or when it compares to production?
Yeah.
Was it more important than production, or was production more important? How would that relate?
They had to tie in safety with production. No two ways about it. When you have uranium and hot material, I'll just say, you got to be more careful. And so I think we had a good safety record at Rocky Flats. Real good.
Do you remember the facility in Ohio that you'd visit? Lewis Research Center,
No.
Port Clinton.
It was a small organization, but it was part of
The nuclear circle.
the nuclear circle. Thank you, Dan. But it was a small one. And I was sent there once. One time I was sent to another area in Philadelphia. The only reason I was sent there, the Rocky Flats needed some of that material, and it was just small, and there wasn't uranium or anything like that. So I got to go and get it and bring it back and give it to the people. But I would say I traveled about 3 times a year in my work. And I also traveled to the 2 design agencies too. In fact, with Los Alamos more than with Livermore. But so I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the work. I enjoyed the people, and I thought the travels were nice too.
How did it personally affect you not being able to talk about your work with your neighbors?
They never asked me, because I would have had to say, I'm sorry, my lips are sealed. And that's it. No, they didn't. But I say, that fellow next door that came over and said the FBI man was talking to him about me.
Must have been weird.
Yeah, he thought, oh boy, what's going on here? But
Now you know that we are developing this museum in Arvada.
yes,
And it's about Rocky Flats, of course. But we also like to touch upon the nuclear weapons development in our world today, nuclear power, nuclear energy, because it's still very, very topical. The Cold War is over, of course.
yeah,
The nuclear weapons are still with us.
yes, they are.
When you think of a museum on Rocky Flats and the broader scope of nuclear issues, what would you like to see in a museum like that? How would you...
Well, if the museum is supposed to cover the whole thing, or just one phase of it, I don't know. But if you cover the whole thing, there's a lot to put in there. You'd have a museum that... Have you gone to Los Alamos to see their museum?
I have, yes.
It's a nice one.
It's a really good museum, yes.
And then Albuquerque's got a nice one too.
Yeah,
And Livermore has too.
a visitor center, as I understand. I've never been in. But
but-
what would you like to highlight in a museum on Rocky Flats?
Well, I'm sorry, I don't quite follow your question.
What would you like to see in a museum on Rocky Flats?
About Rocky Flats?
Would you like to highlight the workers or the production or maybe the accidents that happened at Rocky Flats? I don't know, the safety, the security. What would you like to see in a museum on Rocky Flats? Or all of the above?
Could be.
Yeah.
Could be. Connie, I was going to say maybe the type of work that goes on. Because it's all different. And it had to be, like I say, when they started up, they had to pull people from different places to run Rocky Flats. I mean, that was we only had 4 or 5 buildings when we started. And it grew to, I don't know how many, 50, 30 to 50, something like that. But I really can't answer your question
No,
completely.
I understand. Maybe when you think of yourself, how would you like to be remembered as a Rocky Flats or a Los Alamos worker? What would you like to leave? What kind of message would you like to leave?
Very important work. And I still feel that way. And I feel if it wasn't for Los Alamos, the Manhattan Project, we would have lost the war. I think that's how important I feel that this program was. Very important. And it was really spread out. And you gotta remember, Manhattan Project. Okay. General, what's his name? The general was given full responsibility for that. And he appointed Dr. Oppenheimer to run Los Alamos. And that was a fine job. But they were given freedom to do what they felt was necessary. And I think this General Groves, he did a good job. And I think that's what he was responsible for, to get a nice weapon so we can win the war. And they did.
And after the war?
Well, I think we should keep our capabilities available if we have to do it again. We've got quite a few people and quite a few materials that are available. I know. They haven't destroyed it all. We'd be stupid if we destroyed everything. No, we got them on our ships. We can put them on our airplanes and so on.
You feel that it kept the world safe?
Yes, I feel if it wasn't for the Manhattan Project, we would still have strong communism. I think we in the United States, I mean, what we've been doing, have cut communism down. But you don't hear much about communism anymore.
But there are countries like North Korea
Well,
developing nuclear weapons. Do you feel at all that it's a potential threat that they might attack the United States? Or do you think we are still...
I still think we're strong, but I still think we got to keep our eyes open. And, you know, that's why we have people that go around keeping their eyes open to what's going on in the rest of the world, so we can be prepared if anything happens. Because we got to have something like that. Just have to. Otherwise, we'd be under Russia's command. So, any other questions?
Is there anything else that you would like to cover, that you would like to mention, that we did not cover in this interview? Anything that I did not ask, that you did not talk about?
Well, how did you feel coming from Holland? What was the discussions in Holland about nuclear energy?
Yeah, or nuclear weapons.
Yeah, or nuclear weapons,
yeah.
right.
People were I think very afraid also of communism.
Absolutely.
More of communism, I think, from what I know from reading and so
Sure.
on, than an actual nuclear war. I think there was a big awareness that communism would kind of influence
Yeah, well,
the system there. Yeah.
we got to keep our eyes and ears open. And even though the war's over, we can always have another one if you're not careful.
Well, thank you so much, Lou, and I hope you will be able to visit us.
I hope so too.
We would love to have you.
I appreciate
your
it.
input in what we are doing. We appreciate your sharing this long experience with Rocky Flats and Los Alamos. And thank you for sharing this with the larger audience that is visiting the museum and following the museum.
Well, I hope so. I hope it does some good.
I have one question, and that is, because of the span of your career there, I think it was after the '69 fire that the first protesters started to evolve into the Westgate and wherever.
Yes.
What was your memory of that? When did it start happening? What was your reaction to
I don't remember when it started, Dan, but all I know is they didn't stay very long because they were ignored. I know they used to stand outside and you'd go by in the morning and see them there standing by the road, you know.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I personally didn't see any reason for them to do that. It's, I mean, we can fight for something, but we got to make sure it's a right cause. And that's all I can say.
Thanks.
So they finally gave up. I mean, you know, they were doing that for about 2-3 years, something like that, and then they didn't see them anymore.
Yeah. Was that bothersome to other your co-workers?
I don't think so.
So it's kind of no effect inside.
Yeah, that's the way I feel.
Yeah.
Well, we had the same trouble with the union, you know, where they, same thing, they wanted to shut things down, you know, so they would win their demands.
Now you were supervisoring by that,
Oh, I was
supervisor by that, right?
I was supervisor from the day I entered Rocky Flats to the day I retired. 30 years.
Okay. So the union was like the antithesis of what you wanted.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes the union has good points, you know, what they're fighting for, and sometimes no.
What was some of the best that the union did for Rocky Flats?
Gee, I don't know.
What was some of the worst?
I don't know that either. Sorry.
That's okay.
Did it cause tensions between the workers, the people who were part of the union and the people who were not members?
I had a lot of people working for me that were in the union. No problem.